Hi, loves, and welcome to the With Love Always podcast, a podcast to help you live the life you were created for. We are your hosts and your friends, Bree
and Marissa,
and we're so grateful you're here.
We pray you listen and leave feeling more inspired, encouraged, and uplifted. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. In today's conversation, we're going to be talking about how to love the difficult people in your life. This is actually an episode that I wrote probably like 6 months ago. I had just jotted it down really quickly in my notes app. Wasn't even sure what exactly inspired it. I felt like it was just almost like a download from God. And it's so sweet because I stumbled upon it the other day and I was reading it kind of with fresh eyes, and I was like, oh wow, this feels especially relevant. And this feels like almost God was providing this information before I actually needed it, like before I was actually encountering people that were maybe a bit more challenging. And so whether you are presently thinking of someone in your life who might be just a bit more difficult to get along with, maybe a little more challenging to just love unconditionally, or maybe this episode is one in which you can be more proactive and actively seek out those people. Wherever you're at, we want this conversation to be such a blessing today and honestly just refresh this perspective. I think there's a lot of language currently I think in society or on social media where I think we can be so guarded and so quick to want to cancel people or discredit them or assume the worst in them. And I think today we really just want to provide a fresh perspective of how can we actively find the best in people and seek restoration and seek love and just see ways in which we can actively seek out the chance to just love someone in a way that is so radical and is so different than what they're used to, and really challenges them in that process. So that's what we're going to unpack today. I'm excited to see where this conversation kind of goes. And one verse I did just want to read over us before we jump in is Proverbs 10:12, which says, "Hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers over all wrongs." And I love the word covers. I think that's such a beautiful description where today, as we kind of unpack and we have like these 5 practical tips that we feel like have really helped us, we just want the framework, as always, comes from our name, to be love, like in love. We just feel like that is where true healing can happen in relationships. That's where true, like meaningful encounter with people can occur, is when we choose to cover and saturate the situation in so much love. So we really hope that that shines through so much in this conversation today. Okay, so to kick it off, here are our 5 practical tips. And starting with the first one, it's don't gossip. Now, I do want to preface this and say that there is a time and place in which I think it's super helpful to have, whether it's a trusted friend, mentor, therapist, someone that we can actually talk and share. Like if there's someone who is, for example, really challenging in our life or hard to love, I think it can be such a tool in which we almost need to talk about that and process that and see the gaps in our own thinking and maybe try to better understand them. So I think that can be a beautiful thing when it's done in a really healthy, intentional manner. However, I do think that line gets really blurred really easily. And so we just want to, almost as like a friendly reminder, even to ourselves, like something I still to this day struggle with is just talking when I'm with close friends, like we're just talking about our life, and naturally people are in our life. And sometimes people are being difficult, and that is just what your mind is thinking about. So I catch myself sharing things and just kind of evaluating, like, was that actually helpful? Like if they were in the room, would they be proud of the way in which I was talking about them? And even if these things are 100% true and things that I'm experiencing, I probably just shouldn't, at least for me, like I try to keep it very black and white, where I just try not to talk about people unless I'm giving them a compliment or really speaking life over someone. If they're not in the room, I really just try to avoid talking about them in its entirety, just to protect myself from getting caught up in gossip. And I kind of think it's a cycle. Like once someone in your friend group talks about someone, then you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm going through that too. And then you're sharing. So yeah, I think it's just safest if we just try our very, very best to avoid anything like that.
Yeah. I think with those people in our life that are a challenge, whether it's a friendship that is feeling a little rocky right now, whether it's a faraway, coworker, like whatever relational person that you're thinking of as we kind of dive into this episode, I think to what you said, there's such a difference between processing and like processing privately with a entrusted friend or someone in your life that's really near and dear. But then there's another thing where you do trespass that boundary and you're just gossiping. Any opportunity, the overflow of your heart, your mouth, your words, your language is truly putting this person down. And I think there's something honestly like psychological about that, of when we do that, we are in that conversation elevating ourselves. And it's like this false sense of dopamine that we're better than them because they're doing this and that. How dare they, or whatever the context is, or, whatever the circumstance is that's for you to live and discern and whatever it may be. But I think the more that we invite that language about that other person to people that are not stakeholders in this relationship or not a part of the day-to-day interactions you may be having with this person, the more negativity that you're actually inviting in. And I think the more you talk about it, the more it'll actually only amplify how frustrated you are. Like, if you keep focusing on the overarching negatives about this person, then you are going to feel that increase every time you're in their presence. And that is not to say, like, we're not saying don't talk about it, don't process. You do need to process. But there's times, even with myself, like, I can think of very specific instances where I was having a really hard wrestling with specific people in my life. And when I would go to entrusted friends, I would, share what I was saying or share what I was feeling, share what I was experiencing. And then the moment that I felt like the conversation was progressing too far, where we were entering territory of speaking ill of this person, I would literally say, like, you know what? It's not worth my breath. It's not worth my time. I'm feeling heavier now that I'm talking negatively. Like, I don't want to put more negative thoughts in my head about this person or this circumstance or whatever it may be, because that gives me opportunity for my heart to grow even more hard. And so sometimes, we're human, and it's going to feel natural and it's going to feel easy to want to expose somebody or to want to make other people be on your side when you're talking about it. But remind yourself, you also have the permission and the control to literally stop that conversation in its tracks, because the more negativity you invite, the more negativity that you'll see. So yeah, be really discerning, because even if it's in private, your words do carry the power of life and death. And something I always ask myself, whether I'm talking about anything at all, if I'm putting so much attention into this relationship that's hard to love, or this encounter that's hard to love, or this person that's a challenge in my life, that is more so exposing to me where I'm posturing my heart more. And that should be a greater concern sometimes than this person themselves. Like, if I'm just eager to talk about this circumstance at any given opportunity, that should be a greater concern for me than what this person's bringing to me.
Yes, no, that's a really good point. And I love what you were saying of like that fine line. And I think one last distinguishing point, I feel like with the few people, and I can honestly count them on one hand, like the people that I truly can process with. And I find that when I do that, I actually have more empathy and understanding for that person. And I'm left feeling lighter, versus when I'm entering the gossip territory or even just sharing with people I probably shouldn't share, I start to feel a sense of either frustration or like a sense of guilt, like a guilt from gossiping, or like I have more like anger towards them because they're kind of feeding into it and they're like, yeah, that is so wrong. I can't believe they're treating you like that. And it just kind of heightens, versus a really healthy person will help you process it and say like your feelings are so valid, and they'll help you like release that, so then you can see with a fresh perspective and be like, okay, how can we tackle this?
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's really, really good. Yeah, processing will give you life and breath. Gossiping will literally bring death to the situation and amplify anger in the situation. And I think that's even like a good thing to just ask yourself, like after you're leaving a conversation, if you're like, was that gossip? Was that processing? Yeah. What is the emotion that you're feeling after? Are you feeling more compassion and ready to walk into that circumstance and relationship with more love? Or are you ready to walk in with more hatred or hardened heart?
Yeah.
That's like really convicting. That's really good. Our next practical tip is to always try your best to assume the best of someone before you assume the worst of someone. I think when we are so quick to assume that the reason why someone is the way they are, or the reason why someone is so challenging, or they're so resistant against us, or whatever it may be, is because we're assuming the worst of them, that they must just be not a kind person. They must just be fill in the blank to whatever assumption or lie about this person that you are believing. That will only amplify the narrative. That will give you more opportunity to misunderstand them. It will give you more opportunity for you to grow such a deep resentment in your heart towards this person. And it'll just give you truly like almost the fuel to your fire to really grow just distant from this person. And not saying that this person needs to be someone that is near in your life, but I think especially when it comes to those people in our life that are hard to love, the greatest thing that will alleviate you as well in the midst of those moments when you are having conversation with these people is to assume the best of them. And I think a practical way that can look like is, let's say, I don't know, for example, it's a friend of yours, and every time you've been with them lately, they have not been quick to listen to you, or they've snapped at you, or whatever it may be. Instead of assuming that your first initial instinct is, oh, well, they're just immature, or they don't know how to handle their emotions, or I'm so much better, I would never do that. While it's okay, like transparently, it's okay for those thoughts to cross your mind. I think a practical way to assume the best of someone and to try to understand this person is to reframe it from a lens of, you know what? I feel like maybe I should check in on this person because maybe they're going through something really hard that's causing them to snap at me. Whether it's a coworker and maybe every interaction you have with this coworker is not friendly and not kind, instead of assuming like, wow, that person's just the worst. Consider the day that maybe that they're having. Consider the season of life that they may be having. Consider the things that they have gone through that you will never know about, maybe ever, and you don't need to know. But I think when we're always seeking to consider the things that we don't know about people, it really does induce compassion in us. And I think whether it's true or whether it's not true, whether maybe it is a picture of their character, of the reason why they are the way that they are, I think just always, something I always do is reminding myself that people in all of their ways, for better or for worse, are the way that they are because of circumstances that have happened to them, of things that they have gone through, of words that have been spoken against them as life-giving things or as weapons against them. And so every person you meet that is a challenge and hard and resistant and maybe unkind is the way that they are because of something that has happened towards them. And I think when I really frame it from, I'm going to assume the best of them first versus assuming the worst of them, it really induces compassion, understanding, and ability for me to almost be slower to speak towards someone in that moment. And instead of being reactive and being frustrated and being quick to snap when I can remind myself of, this is not personal, why they're acting this way towards me. This is something that they have gone through or are going through, or maybe so buried deep in their subconscious of why they are the way that they are. And at the end of the day, we don't know why anybody is the way that they are. But when we choose to believe that there is a reason so far deeper than what we're seeing on the surface, I really believe it almost empowers us to rise to that occasion and be like, you know what? Yes, this person in my life is being really unkind or really X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to rise to the occasion and really believe that they are so much greater than that, even if I never see the greater from them.
That's so good. And I even think it's I think naturally something we tend to do in conflict is put yourself in the other person's shoes, try to understand them. But I also think there's a line, which you were kind of mentioning, of sometimes I just don't understand someone. Even when they share their past and their hurt, I still don't understand how they can be the way they are. And I think what I've learned is that's okay. I actually don't have to understand someone in order to love them. I think I can try to see if there are gaps in which I can meet and love them extra into the painful parts that they're experiencing. But ultimately, it's whether I understand them or not, the way in which I behave should not change. I still should choose to love them just the same. So I think sometimes we just can exhaust ourselves when there's that one person and we're I just don't get them. And honestly, I want us to feel the freedom to say, that's okay. There will be a number of people that no matter what, you're just not going to get them. And that doesn't
not meant to.
Yeah. I think it's it still is so okay. Love them absolutely regardless. Those are probably the people that need extra love and such an outpouring of love. So, okay, number 3, and this kind of goes hand in hand, and it is to praise the good parts in them and to call them higher. And this, again, seems kind of counterintuitive. And honestly, I'm still learning how to do this in a practical sense. And it's really just something that's such a biblical perspective of the way in which we can just honor and serve people is to not only find the best current parts of them, but also see the potential of who they can become. So I think as we're loving people, it's we're not only loving the version of them that they currently are, we're loving the potential of who we know they're capable of becoming. So it's in my process of loving them, I'm not only trying to heal parts of them, I'm also trying to heal them so that they can step into this person that I know they're capable of becoming. So in my mind, it's I know, let's say somebody's unkind. I believe there are characteristics and traits in which they probably possess that I'm maybe overlooking. And so how can I highlight those good parts of them? And how can I also praise and love them in a way that causes them to want to be kind and causes them to want to refine these areas that maybe are more difficult for them. And I think it's one of those things where it really has nothing to do with them, and it has everything to do with how we can just respond and love people unconditionally in that.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's the concept of calling out the gold in somebody. And like we've mentioned in this conversation so far, whoever you're thinking about, even in this conversation, maybe you're well, this is a person not even close enough to me where I would want to extend those things or offer that, and we totally understand that. Maybe the person you're thinking about isn't a friend or family member. Maybe it is that coworker, like I said, or someone who's a little bit farther away in the background, and you're thinking, well, there's not really opportunity to do that. And that could be true, and that is your circumstance. But I think honestly, I keep going back to coworkers, because I think back more when I worked in corporate America, and I like worked at a huge office. Like we had, I don't remember how many people at this company, like thousands of people. And I was encountering people like all day long. And so I think that's like such a relative, example in my own head. And there was plenty of people that I worked with in close proximity, but then plenty of people that were so far away and felt very far removed. But no matter how far removed someone is in your life, if there is a frequency in which you're seeing them for them to frustrate you, then there's a frequency of opportunity to divinely encourage them. And I think just something that I remind myself always, always, always with anybody that is a frustration, whether it's a stranger I passed on the street, the person that honked on me when I was driving over here, or a coworker, whoever it may be, is that no matter who you're talking to, like everyone at the end of the day was made in the image of God. And so I promise you, in the midst of whoever they currently are and whoever they're presenting themselves to be, there is something about their heart and who they are that is like Jesus. Yeah. And they might not know that. They might not be quick to present that. But even if you are like looking for that and you're seeking, you know what, this person frustrates me to no end, but I'm going to try in my inner workings of my mind to search my heart and ask God for me to identify one way that I see Jesus in them. And I'm confident if you like put that intention forward, you will find something. And it might feel like something that's like muddled beneath all the other things that are really hard to love. But to what Marissa said, if you can find that one thing, and even in an opportunity where you are engaging with this person, if you can just call that out, even if it's just once of like, hey, like, I love the way that you serve, or I love, maybe someone who is very outspoken and it can come off as like a negative thing. Be like, you know what? I really admire your assertiveness. I desire to be more assertive. I've actually said that before, like there's a circumstance in which this person was unjustifiably upset with somebody else. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? And the way that I ended up kind of mediating the circumstance was having a conversation with this person who got really upset. And I just said, I really admire how strong your voice is. Like, thank you for trying to speak up in a moment that you wanted to express yourself. And though that could feel almost like, well, you shouldn't have spoken up, like you shouldn't have said those things, I think at the same time, in moments when you can unexpectedly approach someone with affirmation, it's gonna do something in them that will soften them, even if you don't notice it outwardly. And they'll also as well like notice a difference in the way that you're choosing to respond versus how everyone else may be responding to them. So something to consider. So that brings us to our next tip, which is finding peace and just reminding yourself at the end of the day that you cannot control anybody else. The only person that you can control is yourself. And I think there really is such a beautiful release when we fully submit, surrender, and believe that it is not our responsibility to control how someone speaks to us, how someone engages with us, how someone understands us. Like, that is not our role, because for as long as we're here on earth, we are always going to be misunderstood. We are always going to have moments when people are unkind, including ourselves. I'm not always going to be the kindest person in the room, and I'm aware of that in my humanness. And I think that's just the reality of life. But it's like, if there's anything that we can harness and if there's anything that we can do to the best of our imperfect ability, it is to just control our response. It's to control our mind. It's to control the way that we view that person in the midst of just the woes of life. And so I think the more that you can remind yourself that you're not meant to fix somebody else, and you're not meant to always receive the respect that you deserve, even though that can feel really like a hard and humbling pill to swallow, just reminding yourself, if you can imperfectly love someone as best as you can, then that is such a victory. And that's the only thing you can do. And you can rest from that moment on. And even if it continues to exist, whether it's the disrespect or whether it's the frustration, whether it's just the unkindness, whatever your circumstance is, like, not allow it to continue to exist or persist, because of course there's like things that you have to do according to your circumstance. But I think just allow you to rest in knowing that it's not a reflection of you at the end of the day. And I can think of very specific instances that like I want to share, but I'm not going to because I feel like I can't. But I can think of specific instances where I was unjustifiably like spoken to against or had things put against me that were so like, this is insane. Like, what is going on? Like, why am I being approached with these conversations? And I had to remind myself in the midst of different conversations that, you know what? I don't have to prove myself here. I don't have to justify who I am. I don't have to explain to this person why what they're doing, what they're saying towards me is unjust. All I have to do is respond to them with respect and with love and with just attention that I'm seeking to understand what they're trying to share with me, even if it's unjust, even if it's unwarranted, even if it's unmerited. That is my only job. And I think I also remind myself in that in moments when I can't stand up for myself or I don't justify myself or I don't explain myself, God is the one who's ultimately bringing justice. And like in that, I'm just resting. Like, I'm misunderstood. That's okay. Like I didn't get what I thought I deserved. That's okay. And like I said, there's a dance with that. There's a time and place to rise to the occasion, to express yourself, to seek that justice, whatever it is. But then there is also times to just rest. And the best thing to do is to remain silent and remain silent in the love and the respect that you're offering that maybe you're not receiving in return.
That's so good. I feel like that's even something I've been praying through, like kind of a just challenging circumstance, somebody who we just see the world so differently. And I think that's just what God's been reminding me is like, Marissa, you don't have to change this person. Like maybe people would think you're right. Maybe some people think I'm wrong. That's okay. Like it's not about who's right or wrong. And it's not about trying to get this person to do something a different way. Like ultimately, I cannot control them. I cannot change them. That is for God to do. All I can do is just like wake up every day, choose how I want to be that day. And I think that is the best protection. Is like we almost think if we don't change people or solve the problem that we're not protecting ourselves. But I think just accepting and letting someone like understanding that I'm going to continue to love them the same, but I'm not trying to change them in my love. Like that's a beautiful byproduct, but ultimately like only God can truly transform hearts. Like it's not up to me to like get this person to have complete transformation. That's just not in our human capacities. And it actually made me think, this is a little bit of a silly story, but it just kind of came to mind. When I first started this job, I was meeting one of my coworkers for the first time. We were doing a little meeting at this kind of like restaurant coffee shop, and he was just walking me through everything he does. And our computer just plugged into this outlet that ran across, like we're in the corner, so it runs across the walkway, but no one would walk there because we're the very last seat in the corner. And this guy who is a few seats away just proceeds to like actually yell at us about having our charger there. And he's like, you can't do that. That's not allowed, all this stuff. And we're like, we're so sorry, but we need to use the computer and it's going to completely die. Like we have to have it plugged in. And he just was going off and was like so grumpy and angry. And it was just kind of that like classic, you know, don't want to stereotype, but like when you think of the older person who's just like grumpy for no reason,
angry at life.
Yeah. And we realized very quickly, like, this is not personal. He doesn't actually care about this and it's not impacting him at all. And finally, like my coworker turned to him and he's like, to me, he was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I need to handle this. And he goes up to the guy and he's like, the guy is still just kind of like, I don't know, talking in circles at this point. And he's like, hey, I hear you. I understand this. Like the last thing I want is to like inflict anything on your day. Like I want the best for you. Like let us know if there's anything we can do, but like we're going to proceed. Please let us be. And it was just like very just like clear and concise. And so the guy, I forget exactly how he responded. I think he was like just like dismissed us and was like, whatever. Anyways, we proceed to then finish up our like meeting. Maybe it was like an hour or two later. And as we're going to leave, the guy stops my coworker and is like, hey, I just wanted to apologize. Like, was having a really bad day. I took it out on you guys. I'm sorry. And we were both just so caught off guard. Like, we were not expecting or even desiring an apology. We just wanted peace. And it was really sweet because then that opened up the opportunity for us just to talk. And then I had to leave, but my coworker ended up staying there, I think, for like 20 minutes, just talking to him about life. Then they ended up actually seeing each other a day later at a restaurant.
Whoa.
And he bought him his food and they like chatted again. And he like, I think, proceeded to just like talk about Jesus with him, all these things. And it was so sweet. And we've since run into that guy at the same place. And now it's like his demeanor has changed so much. And it's so cool to see, like, yes, we don't always get to see like the beauty of how treating people in love, like what that can lead to. Sometimes people aren't always going to come up and apologize, but we never know the impact that that's going to have on someone.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it just, let me see if I can like phrase it right. But in my head, it's like if your intention is to really be selfless in the sense that you are doing things not for the benefit of you, like you're not going up to that person and you're like, hey, can you keep it down for the benefit of your like silence alone? It's truly to meet that person where they're at, meet them with honor, meet them with respect. And then in return, like, yeah, we don't know how we're impacting them. But I think when we operate from a selfish place in the sense that we want respect, we want silence, we want whatever it may be, that's when we're more prone to approach people that are challenging like that with the same disrespect that they're giving us. So like, hey, like, can you keep it down, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's really like approaching people with the most selfless like intent in the sense that you are not looking for any gain for yourself. Like, I am not looking to receive your respect, to receive silence. I mean, maybe, yeah, you would like silence, but I'm not looking for the outcome of anything truly of my gain, but truly to just like, I don't know, love that person and meet that person where they're at. And that's a beautiful thing is like, actually, when you approach things selflessly, it actually can result in a beautiful outcome for yourself versus if you approach it selfishly and you're like, I need something from this. I don't know. I think that just really, like people can feel that intention as well. I don't know. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It's like such a challenge to like describe because I think I'm also thinking of like such specific circumstances that I can't talk about.
And truly every circumstance is so different. And I think what was so interesting about that situation is it's not like we then went and like instantly bought his like coffee for him, which would have been awesome. Like, I think that's a great idea. It was like I think that was almost an example of like truly when I think of calling someone higher of like, hey, I hear you, like, here's what I would like if you'd be willing to give that to me. It was almost like a boundary. And it wasn't like love in the way people picture, but it was a beautiful form of love. It made me realize sometimes people just want to be seen and they want to be understood, even if you're like standing up to them, so to speak. It's like when you treat them like a human and don't just dismiss, I think there's a lot of power in that when we like humanize even people's anger.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 5 and our last and final point, which just kind of puts a ribbon on this whole conversation, and that is what we've been emphasizing, I think, through every point, which is just to be radically different. And I know for us, our greatest intention is we ultimately want people to see the love of Jesus through the way in which we interact with people. It's not about, yes, there are obviously, like, I would love peace, restoration, like harmony, all the things. I would love grace for difficult people. But ultimately, I want the way in which I engage people to honestly catch people off guard. Like, I want to stop people in their tracks and for them to truly be like, wait, that doesn't actually make sense. Like, why are they treating me that way? That to me, if nothing else, and again, like the story you shared, maybe you won't even know the impact. And I think even like in the story I shared, like it did lead the guy ultimately to be like, hey, like I was not being nice to you guys. Like, why did you do that? Like there was a curiosity that like I think begins to just build with time, and whether you see it instantly or years down the line, or you don't see it at all. I think people are so curious of like, how can this person, amidst how I treat them, they continue to love me and treat me with such respect.
Yeah.
And so I think that if nothing else, I'm like, okay, that for me is enough reason to continue to fight for just loving people with unconditional kindness and unconditional love.
Yeah. And I think meeting people with a response that they don't deserve is truly what love is. And that's really like the picture of what Jesus did for us. It's like he did the ultimate sacrifice in the name of love for us who didn't deserve it. So why wouldn't we want to extend that to people who don't deserve it? And I think about moments when someone's extended that to me, of whether it's a friend or any other person in my life who is near and dear to me, who loves me in a moment where I really did not deserve that compassion, those words, that encouragement, that anything, and yet you still met me in that place. So why wouldn't I want to go out and meet the world from that place? And we're not always going to do it. We're not always going to be perfect in it, but there is something so honestly, like you feel it like supernatural in your spirit when you literally defy what logic will tell you what the world around you is doing, and you literally extend a love that does not exist outside of Jesus. It is the most empowering thing also for yourself, of like, wow, I get to operate out of the spirit. I don't have to operate out of my flesh. I don't have to operate out of what the world tells me is permissible on how to treat people. I get to operate in a way that is a reflection of heaven, and that is an invitation for me to bring heaven to earth. And to what you said, for people to be like, wow, I really wonder why that girl was so nice to me. And you never know how God's using all those encounters in that person's life to plant seeds or to lead them to a beautiful moment for themselves of realizing how loved they are themselves. You never know. And I think that, to what you said, like for that reason alone, it is so worth it to me to do things with a trembling voice, to express love and respect to someone who doesn't deserve it. Because at the end of the day, like we don't need, like we've said, we don't need to justify ourselves. We don't need to explain ourselves. We don't need to bring justice to ourselves. We don't need to prove to anyone that we are worthy of love. We are already loved. And that is literally a crown that is already on our head. And because we are loved, it's now our honor to love the world. We don't need to gain any more love or respect from anybody. And I think there's so much peace in that. Yeah.
That was so beautifully said. And I think just the last final thing, I just want to read Luke 6:32-36, which I think is such a powerful passage. And it just reads, "Are you really showing true love by loving only those who love you? Even those who don't know God will do that. Are you really showing compassion when you do good deeds only to those who do good deeds to you? Even those who don't know God will do that. If you lend money only to those you know will repay you, what credit is that to your character? Even those who don't know God will do that. Rather, love your enemies and continue to treat them well. When you lend money, don't despair if you are never paid back, for it is not lost. You will receive a rich reward, and you will be known as true children of the Most High God, having His same nature." I feel like that verse just perfectly depicts what you were describing. And so that's our greatest hope, is like, we might not see the rewards of the love that we unconditionally pour out, but we get to love because we were first loved. And it's from that place of freedom and belonging and identity that we then go out into the world and we are able to operate differently, like you shared. And so we just pray that this conversation offered a new perspective, and that honestly through it you were able to find a new sense of freedom as you approach challenging people, challenging circumstances, and you realize that you don't have to operate in a reactive way based on how people are treating you. You get to continue to just operate and maintain such a peace and such a joy, regardless of how people respond. That is up to them, and we know how we want to continue to just love people and pour into them. So that's our greatest hope, and we pray this conversation was so life-giving for you guys. Okay, so for this week's Love Notes, once again, didn't have anything prepared in mind, but I'm like, let's do what we love doing, which is just talking about our lives and just giving little random life updates. So why don't you kick it off?
I'll kick it off. I have like the most random thoughts in my head going on right now.
I want them to be so random.
They feel so random, but it's just the first things that came to mind, so I'm just going to share it. Well, it's currently September. I mean, yeah,
it just became September when we're recording.
Yeah, and I'm honestly, living in California, we kind of get summer a lot longer than usual, but I am honestly so ready for fall. Some people are not. I am. I'm so ready for fall, but I think what's so funny right now, also I feel like I have an eyelash in my eye. For those watching on YouTube, I always think about our friends watching on YouTube, definitely towards the end of this episode, I almost sneezed while you're doing the outro, and now I'm over here trying to get an eyelash out of my eye, but
they know behind the scenes.
The people listening just have to imagine, but yeah, I'm just so ready for fall. But it's funny because we're having a heat wave right now,
a severe heat wave.
Yeah.
Is it 100 in LA for you guys?
I don't know. But all I know is right here in the valley, it's 107.
I think it's going to be higher because
that's scary.
It said up to 120 because it gets 100 is kind of normal in the summer where we are. But once you hit I'm 120, I actually think I might melt. I'm worried about my plants. Pray for my plants.
Your plants. Oh my gosh, I have none.
They're struggling.
Yeah, poor babies. I'm struggling. I can only imagine being a plant. But yeah, I'm so ready for fall. And you see it on social media. Some people are like, don't bring out the fall pumpkin spice lattes. I'm like, please bring it out. I'm ready. But also I know in California, we do kind of get summer a little bit longer. So I just like the idea of fall being here. So I'm excited for that. Another random thought. I did not surf at all this summer. This was not my summer of surfing. I know, R.I.P. R.I.P.
So sad.
It was not my summer of surfing. I thought it would be, but that's okay. I literally don't think I brought my surfboard out really once. The last time I surfed was with you.
Oh, and that was cold.
Ever ago. It was so freezing.
That was still very winter.
I was freezing. I had the shakes in the water.
It's not too late. Now is actually the perfect surf time.
I bet. Because I feel the water, the heat is so hot, right? The heat is so hot. Well, that's why it's called hot. That's why it's called heat.
No, the water, I dipped in last night and it was 7 p.m. and it was warm, bath water, and that is so rare for where we are.
That's so rare.
And it felt so good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I honestly probably won't have time until after October.
Oh, true.
Another life update from me is I've just been traveling so much, which is such a blessing. But I was telling Marissa, when I got here, I think that's something about social media that social media doesn't show. It's all my friends who may follow me on social media, you probably are seeing a lot of my travels, but also a reminder that just because it's fun and beautiful and so special doesn't mean it's not disorienting. I'm about to leave again for another trip in a couple weeks, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. And I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to it for so long, but I'm also just so yearning to be back in routine. But also I think that's just the season I'm kind of in right now of accepting that all I can do right now is do my best and find little pockets of routine here and there. But it's just a season where I'm kind of out of routine, and that's okay. That is a part of life, and all the things that I'm doing that are making me be out of routine, or not making me, that I'm choosing to do that are out of routine are such a joy. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't take away from the feelings of, I just feel really out of routine right now. So, But yeah, it's all good things. But I'm already excited to come back from my trip and be back in LA. I literally just want to be in LA. Yeah. I feel I have not been present enough in LA this summer.
That's kind of my little life update. There's this new term which I feel like I knew this, but now I'm putting like language to it. And it's called local summer. And it's because we live in such a touristy area and we have so many people that visit, honestly, starting like May time. Officially, once you hit September is when a lot of tourism like starts to die down where we are, and a lot of kids are back in school. And so it's like true local summer, and then all of the locals are actually back from their travels. And so it's been so fun. Like, honestly, just going, like, I'm always in Malibu and just seeing people, like, it's actually just like the people I know that live there. Yeah. And so that's super sweet. And it's been like great surf, great weather. So honestly, I'm just trying to take this next month. And I've actually, this could be a record, probably not, but I got like super sick last week and every day I was going to the beach because it's the only thing I could do. And so I think I truly have not missed a sunset at the beach for like 2 weeks.
Oh,
and it's been
so sweet.
So fun. It can be a lot of work. I will say it's like something I'm inserting into my schedule of like, I have to make this thing work. But it's honestly been a blast. And I'm like, what if I just am crazy and do that for a month straight? And like all of my plans, like if I have work, if I'm seeing people, the amount of people I've invited to like sunset on the beach is wild.
So sweet.
But it's been so fun. So I am just going to continue to press into that because it's going to be, the days are going to be so short before we know it.
I know. That's what I'm scared of.
That's the one thing I'm not looking forward to is the water getting cold again, the days being shorter.
Yeah, I know. It'll be like 4 p.m. sunsets again. I know, gas.
I can't.
But that's like dead of winter. We still have fall.
I lose my personality then.
I know.
It's like, I actually don't have hobbies that exist
outside of being outside.
Yeah, truly.
No, literally.
Guys, that's everything. We hope you enjoyed this little segment, and we will see you in our next episode. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening. We pray this episode was encouraging and life-giving. If you found it valuable, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe.
And be sure to follow us along over on Instagram at With Love Always Podcast. Signing off with all of our love always, Bree
and Marissa.